Hi everyone, this is the Nordic Venture Show, your guide to the exciting world of Nordic startups and venture capital. In today's episode, we're exploring a startup called Real.
All right, so we're diving into Real today, this company that's making waves in the renewable energy world.
Yeah.
We dug through their website articles, all that good stuff, to really understand what they're about. Because on the surface, they're this electricity supplier, but they seem to be doing something kind of different.
Right.
So let's start with the basics. What is Real actually offering?
So they're really focused on this idea of direct sourcing for renewable energy, specifically through these things called power purchase agreements, PPAs.
Power purchase agreements.
Yeah, have you heard of those before?
I've heard the term, but I'll admit I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Okay, so basically it's like this. Imagine instead of getting your renewable energy from a traditional utility company, you're going straight to the source.
Straight to the source.
Yeah, like directly to the wind farm or the solar park that's generating the electricity.
Oh, interesting. So you're actually buying the energy right from where it's produced.
Exactly, and that's what a PPA is. It's a contract between a company like, let's say, yours and a renewable energy developer, and it locks in the price of that energy, usually for a pretty long time, like 5 to 10 years.
Wow, so it's a long-term agreement.
Exactly, and that's one of the big advantages, especially these days with energy prices all over the place.
That makes a lot of sense. Locking in a fixed price for renewable energy seems like a pretty smart move in this day and age.
Yeah, it's a big deal for companies trying to manage their costs and be more sustainable.
So it's good for the planet and potentially good for the bottom line, too.
No, exactly. It's that win-win we're always hearing about.
I like it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the how here. How do these PPAs actually work in practice?
Well, it can get a little complicated, and that's where Real steps in. They've created this whole platform to simplify the process.
Okay, so they're like the middleman connecting businesses with the right renewable energy projects.
Yeah, you could think of them as a matchmaker of sorts. They use technology to match companies with the PPA that fits their specific needs.
So let's talk about that process. Their website mentions something about a 4-step process and an algorithm. What's that all about?
Right, so the first thing they do is gather a bunch of data about a company's electricity consumption.
So they're figuring out how much energy a business actually uses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When they use it, what their peak demand times are, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. You got to understand the needs before you can find a solution.
Right, and that's where the algorithm comes in. It takes all that data and sifts through a database of renewable energy projects.
To find the perfect match.
Precisely. It considers things like location energy capacity, even things like the company's sustainability goals.
So it's pretty sophisticated stuff, not just throwing darts at a board.
Not at all. It's about making sure there's a good fit between the company and the renewable energy project.
Interesting. So once a company finds its perfect match, what happens then? Does Real just make the introduction and disappear?
That's actually one of the things I find really interesting about their model. They're involved throughout the entire process.
Oh, really? So they do more than just connect the dots.
Yeah, way more. For example, businesses can actually track the construction progress of their chosen renewable energy project through Real's platform.
Wow, so they can literally see their investment taking shape.
Exactly. And then once the project is up and running, Real handles all the billing and makes sure that the renewable energy gets delivered to the company.
Wow, so they're with you every step of the way. That's pretty impressive. But I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
They talk about this concept of additionality on their website. What does that mean exactly?
That's a really important point. Additionality basically means that when a company signs a PPA through Real, they're not just buying existing renewable energy, they're directly supporting the development of new renewable energy projects.
So it's not just about switching to a greener source, it's about increasing the overall amount of renewable energy in the grid.
You got it.
That's a pretty significant distinction. I never really thought about it that way before.
Yeah, it's a big part of what makes PPAs different from just choosing a green energy plan from your traditional provider.
That makes sense. So it's not just about offsetting your own emissions, it's about actually adding more clean energy to the mix.
Exactly.
But it still begs the question, why wouldn't a company just buy renewable energy through their regular provider?
That's a fair point. But remember those benefits we talked about earlier, like locking in those fixed prices?
Right.
And directly supporting new renewable energy infrastructure.
Yeah.
Those are pretty compelling reasons to consider a PPA.
Yeah, that's true. Plus, it seems like there's a certain level of transparency and control that you don't get with traditional green energy plans.
Absolutely. And Real emphasizes that a lot. They're all about providing data and reporting so companies can see exactly what they're getting for their money.
So they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk when it comes to transparency.
Precisely. They even have testimonials on their website from companies like Bater and Aquaporin who are already seeing the benefits of PPAs firsthand.
Real-world examples always make a difference.
For sure. It's one thing to hear about the theory, but it's another to see it actually working for businesses.
Totally. So we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to circle back to something that caught my eye.
Okay.
Reel has this tagline, "No greenwashing, just science," which is a pretty bold statement in an industry that sometimes gets accused of, well, not quite living up to his promises.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It definitely piqued my curiosity.
Me too. So how does Reel back up that claim? What's the science behind their approach?
That's where Real's approach really stands out. They're not just about selling renewable energy. They're advocating for a more transparent and accountable way of doing it. Remember all that data analysis we talked about? That's a big part of their no greenwashing philosophy.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does data play into all of this?
Well, with traditional green energy plans, you often don't know exactly where that energy is coming from. Are you supporting old renewable energy sources, or are you actually driving the development of new ones? It can be hard to tell. Reel argues that their data-driven approach to PPAs brings a new level of transparency to the equation.
So instead of just checking a box that says renewable energy, companies can see exactly how much renewable energy they're getting and where it's coming from.
That's the idea. Reel connects your energy consumption directly to a specific project, eliminating the guesswork and allowing for real accountability. It's like the farm-to-table movement in the food industry, but for renewable energy.
I like that analogy. So if I'm a business owner, what's the real-world impact of all this data transparency? What's the so what factor?
Firstly, it allows for more informed decision-making. Companies can see the direct impact of their energy choices and track their progress toward their sustainability goals. Secondly, it combats greenwashing by providing verifiable proof of renewable energy sourcing. And finally, this level of transparency can be a powerful driver of change within entire industries.
That's interesting. Tell me more about these potential ripple effects.
Imagine a scenario where more and more companies start demanding this kind of transparency from their energy providers. It could push the entire sector toward greater accountability, incentivize innovation in how we measure and track renewable energy, and ultimately accelerate the transition to a cleaner grid.
So it's not just about individual companies going green, it's about shifting the entire system. That's a pretty ambitious goal.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the environmental benefits either. This kind of transparency can enhance a company's brand reputation and appeal to increasingly environmentally conscious consumers.
It sounds like Reel is tapping into a growing desire for businesses to not just talk the talk when it comes to sustainability, but to actually walk the walk.
Precisely. And they're doing it by using technology to make renewable energy more accessible, understandable, and impactful.
This is where it gets really interesting because it feels like Reel is going beyond just offering a service. They're trying to change the conversation around renewable energy altogether.
I think that's a fair assessment. They're challenging the status quo and pushing for a more data-driven, transparent, and ultimately accountable approach to sustainability.
It's like they're taking this thing that seems so complex, like all the ins and outs of renewable energy infrastructure and boiling it down to something tangible that businesses can really grab onto.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to that idea of additionality we were talking about.
Yeah.
Anyone can say they're using renewable energy, but to be able to say you actually help build the wind farm or the solar park that's powering your business, that's a whole other level.
It's a powerful statement for sure. And I imagine it could have a ripple effect too. Like if more companies get on board with this approach, it could really accelerate the development of new renewable energy projects.
Oh, absolutely. And don't underestimate the impact this could have on how consumers view these companies too. In today's world, people want to support businesses that are walking the walk on sustainability. And this kind of transparency, being able to show exactly how you're contributing to a greener future, that's huge.
It's almost like a new era of brand storytelling. It's not just about slapping a green label on something anymore. It's about showing tangible action and transparency.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond those vague claims and showing real commitment.
So as we start to wrap up here, for those listening in who are now thoroughly intrigued by Reel, what would you say are the key takeaways? What should they be thinking about after they finish this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Reel represents a real shift in how we think about and access renewable energy. It's not just about checking a box anymore. It's about taking a more proactive and engaged approach to sustainability. and doing it in a way that's transparent and impactful.
They're not just changing the way businesses buy energy, they're changing the whole conversation around what it means to be a sustainable company.
Exactly.
Mm.
Real is reminding us that we're not just passive consumers of energy. We have the power to choose where energy comes from and to support the transition to a cleaner, more sustainable future.
Real has definitely given us a lot to think about, that's for sure. Now we want to hear from you. What are your takeaways? What resonated with you? Let us know.
Thanks for listening to the Nordic Venture Show. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories of innovation from the Nordics.